We just got through most of the bowl games, all the New Year's Six bowl games, and the playoff games. And I was gonna come on here and do a video about Florida State's Orange Bowl game against Georgia, but I actually decided I wanted to wait to do it till after the playoff games got played, and then could kind of just talk about it all at once. Now for the Orange Bowl matchup, Florida State versus Georgia. Florida State got their ass kicked, 63-3, and it wasn't pretty. It was a rough day. But it also didn't really feel like a real game. That's because it wasn't. My wife actually asked me, she's like, "How are you so calm sitting? Your team is down by 40 something points. Why are you not freaking out?" Because I normally freak out. And I told her, this game is nothing. This game means nothing. This game might as well be on Madden. I don't know. But I want to talk about that a little bit more. And to ease some Florida State fans and to combat the morons out there. If you know football, you understand that that game on Saturday proves nothing. Absolutely nothing. Actually, I'll say this. It proves one thing. It proves that back-to-back national champs, Georgia Bulldogs, it proves that their starters are better than Florida State's third stringers. That's all that proves. I've seen a lot of the, I guess the committee got it right comments, and that's just such a dishonest take. And I think most people understand that when they say that, but they say it anyway because people are stupid. But anybody who truly knows football, and a lot of people who don't even understand that game was a sham from the start. That game was a sham before it was even announced, and I think Saturday just proved that. 53 of 85 scholarship players were available for the game. You're down Jared Verse, Keon Coleman, Jordan Travis, Johnny Wilson, Trey Benson, starting offensive lineman, Fabian Lovett, Braden Fitz didn't play, DJ Loney didn't play, Tatum Bethune, Renardo Green, Akeem Dent. All those guys either couldn't play or went to the draft or were hurt. You had 53 of 85 scholarship players available for this game against the reigning champs. And among those guys, we're talking about Joshua Burrell, Quindarius Jones, Ashton Barker. All guys got starting reps. And I'm sorry, no disrespect to them guys. I'm actually fairly excited about quite a few of those guys. But they were not in a position yet, at least, to play against a team like Georgia. And they just weren't, and the scoreboard reflected that. Yeah, once it was announced and once we had a lot of our guys opt out or head to the NFL draft, I knew. I was like, oof, it's gonna be a rough game. I had really no expectations for Florida State to win. I didn't know how much I expected them to compete. I had a feeling that 63-3 loss was I didn't expect it to be that bad, but I expected something similar, and that's what we got, and it is what it is. And for those who just say that that's just an excuse, that Florida State is just an excuse as to why they lost, they were going to lose like that anyway. First of all, you don't know that. That again, that's also a disingenuous take. And Kirby Smart himself, the coach of the team that just blew us out 63-3, literally said himself, it's a shame what happened to them guys over on that sideline. We had our guys, they didn't. Simple as that. They've got to fix this. They've got to fix bowl games. They have to do something about this. Kirby Smart, another team. Georgia also got screwed out of the playoffs here. Georgia is a top four team, no question. I think the playoffs proved that. And that's why they went out there and proved what they needed to prove. And I think they did that, to be honest with you. But even he knew that game was not how it should have been, and I think he even said that. So saying that's an excuse is again, it's a homer take. It's BS, and it's a robbery to the fans who should have got to see a great game. We geared up. I geared up all year for a Florida State versus Georgia matchup in the playoffs, a real matchup in the playoffs, and I definitely never thought that this is how we were going to get it, and the fact that it played out like that just shows how flawed the system is right now, and how there's things that really need to be put in place to fix this. But yeah, if you're a Florida State fan, it was a rough day. Yeah, some Gator friends are gonna talk shit to you for a little bit, although I don't understand why, considering they watched that bowl game from their couch, and so did their players. So in Miami, they lost to Rutgers. So I don't want to hear anything from either of those fan bases. But what bothers me most is the Florida State fans that are acting like players that opted out are at fault for the way it played out somehow. And you know, I got to say this, guys, don't be mad at the players. They opted out, but don't look at that as a betrayal. I've seen a lot of that. Like, you left the team hanging. They left their brothers. They abandoned Mike. No, that's not what happened. And again, if you know ball, you understand that's not what happened. But I do think it's pretty weak to be a Florida State fan and be mad at guys like Jared Verse or Keon for not playing the bowl game. I mean, they just watched Jordan Travis get hurt. They just watched him. I mean, Trey Benson was in shambles on the sidelines after Jordan went down. That whole team just watched that. And a game against North Alabama, a game that, you know, didn't mean anything. So they see that, and then they still go on to win the other games they have. They still go on and do everything that they have to do to remain undefeated and try to earn a playoff spot. And then they get told that all 13 of those games didn't matter because of one player, which, again, I think was a bullshit excuse, but it's what we got. Why would they risk seeing what happened to Jordan? Why would they risk doing that to themselves in a game that means even less than they thought all the other ones did? I'm sorry, but Jared Verse doesn't care about your bragging rights, and that's essentially all we would have gotten from really competing or potentially winning this game had all of our starters played. Jared Verse and Keon Coleman, they don't care about your bragging rights, and I'm sorry, they shouldn't either. And to that point, you know, like I think a lot of guys like Keon and Akeem Dent, Braden Fisk, you know, Braden Fisk was in the boot most of the season. Keon obviously had something nagging at him towards the end of the season. He had something going on with his hips or his ribs in the Louisville game, and you could see that after one of the hits he took. So it's not that I think players just completely opted out. I think they were already banged up, and had it been a playoff spot or a championship run on the line, they would have fought through it the way they had all year because that's what they were aiming towards. They knew now their best case scenario was winning a game for bragging rights. Worst case, though, they re-agitated injury. They have a gruesome injury like Jordan Travis and hurt their chances at the NFL. And it's just not worth it. To that point, we saw Will Shipley get hurt in their bowl game. Darius Washington and Rob Scott got hurt in the Orange Bowl. Rob Scott's another guy's been hurt all year. He's hardly played, and he played and got hurt again. So this whole sentiment that the team quit on itself or whatever you want to call it, I think is a weak excuse to try to cope with what just happened. Blaming the players is a sorry way to go about that, I think. And I think if you ask Mike, if you ask the other players that went on the field and got embarrassed, if you ask Jordan Travis, who was sitting right there with crutches, if they would rather have guys like Fabian and Keon and Jared. And sure, they probably would have loved to play with them again. And I would have loved to see him in a Florida State jersey again. Because when we watched them against Louisville, we all thought, okay, we're getting a playoff run out of this team now. And none of us knew that was the last time we were going to see those guys play for Florida State. So I'd have loved to see him play again. But not at the risk and the expense of potentially ruining their careers. It's almost like when we hired Mike and he took Memphis to their best season in program history. I think they made a New Year's Six bowl, the Cotton Bowl, I think. And once we hired him, he didn't coach that game. He moved on and started getting ready to come coach at Florida State. It's not an abandonment problem. It's not a culture problem. It ain't none of that. It ain't a lack of loyalty. It's just business. It's the way it all works. And to try to cast some kind of shade on that, I think is just odd. I think it's weird, and I think it's a pretty sad way to address what happened. To that point, like I said, I think Georgia showed that they were one of the Georgia's performance, and then the way the playoffs went. I mean, Alabama did not look great. And I think Georgia showed that they're a top four team, and they also got screwed in this process, and they didn't have a fair shake with their bowl game either. They didn't get a competitive game like they should have. The difference is, and people want to say, like, Georgia, all Georgia's players stayed. Why didn't Florida State's? It's a little different. Georgia didn't just watch their starting quarterback who they've been with for, I mean, Jordan Travis has been here for 5 years. And it all gone in a second. Georgia didn't just go through that. Georgia didn't just go through getting told their whole season undefeated did not matter. Georgia lost a game, and that's why they got left out. And that's why we got left out. If Georgia goes undefeated and they beat Alabama like they should have, I don't know how they lost to that team. They would have got in. And Florida State probably would have got in too because ESPN would have got their SEC team. And then it would have been Georgia, Michigan, Washington, probably Florida State, the way it should have been. And I think Georgia having that loss and getting spurred just because of that, I think it's a different mindset than the heartache that Florida State just went through, and literally being told that no matter what they did, no matter how good they were all season, Jared Verse was elite all year long. Keon was one of the best receivers in college football, especially when he was healthy. And they just all got told that it did not matter because of the conference we play in, because of the strength of schedule, and whatever else. Georgia didn't have that problem. Georgia can put a pen to paper why they lost or why they got left out. And it's because they lost that game to Alabama. That's on them. I also think there's a bit of a snowball effect when it comes to players opting out. One guy was like, well, we're not going to have Jared and we're not going to have Jordan, so I'm going to opt out. And then Johnny sees Keon opt out or vice versa, or Trey Benson sees them opt out and Akeem Dent opts out, so Renardo Green does the same thing, and Jarian, and the less of your starters there, there's less of a chance you're going to win the game anyways. So, again, I would have loved to see all those guys play again. There just was nothing in it for them. Now, moving on from that Alabama and Michigan game was telling, and I think it proved the issue here. First of all, both of the one-loss teams they put in over Florida State lost. So it's Michigan and Washington in the national championship now. The two other undefeated teams in the playoffs. Alabama's quarterback, Jalen Milroe, put up less than 200 yards offense. Only passed for 116. He had a pretty bad fumble, terrible play call there to end the game, and he has a bad run also. Just last play of the game, I don't know why that was what was called there, but I mean, their center was rolling snaps on the ground. They didn't look great on offense. Their running back scored their only 2 touchdowns. Had their kicker not been one of the best kickers in the country, they may not even scored 20. Michigan had a stretch in that game. Really, I think their third quarter at one point they had like only 38 yards in the second half. So we saw the game with struggling offenses and good defenses keeping it competitive until something could finally give and get some points on the board. And that's what happened. I mean, there was bad special teams. There was all of it. I'm watching that game, and call me a homer all you want, but go back. Florida State could have competed with either of those teams. And you can't convince me otherwise. Florida State had an elite defense. Alabama's offensive line, Jalen Miller got sacked 6 times. 6 times. Florida State's defensive line would have feasted against Alabama. And Michigan's special team stuff, I mean, I have a hard time feeling like Florida State wouldn't have taken advantage of that either. They had against LSU 2 years in a row. The Texas-Washington game was a little bit better, but I still feel that a Florida State, fully healthy Florida State team could have competed and beaten any team in the college football playoff. Now, without Jordan, that does get a little trickier. We saw, like I said, we saw good defense, and maybe Tate had stayed if we actually would have been on a playoff run, and maybe that looks a little bit different, but who knows really. My point though is that Florida State's best team at fully healthy could have won the national championship. And yes, that's a what if. I could sit there and say that all day long. I understand that, but this is just my rebuttal, I guess you want to call it, to all the people who are out there chanting SEC and saying Florida State clearly didn't belong 63-3, even though it was far from the same team. I love the idea that one player in Jordan Travis going down makes Florida State a different team on December 4th. But December 30th, that's a Florida State team. That's the same team that played all 13 games, even though they were down about 20-something starters, 23 starters. So one player makes us a different team, but 23 don't. It's hypocrisy all the way around. No matter what you can dice up and throw at me, I'm sure I'll get loaded up in the comments here. You can go ahead, please. More engagement. But Every argument you have for why Florida State should have been left out is hypocritical at best. Maybe they would have lost. Maybe they would have got blown out. We don't know, and neither do any of you guys. So opinions, fine. But acting like what happened Florida State and Georgia the other day, acting like that had any real resemblance of what the playoff game would have been like, is ridiculous. And I think everybody really knows that. There's still going to be the guy or two in the comments that tell me I'm wrong and I'm an idiot, and that's fine. But that's just my take on it. I think Florida State easily could have competed and probably won a national championship with Jordan Travis. I think it's a shame that they didn't get to try to prove themselves even without him. And what really sucks is that we'll never know how far this team could have gone, and that definitely sucks. But what I do know is that, to you guys, Jordan, Jared, Keon, all you guys, 2023 was an unbelievable football season for Florida State and Florida State fans. It was a privilege to watch. I even went to a few of the games. It was a privilege to go to. It was a privilege to cheer on the Noles. And anybody who disagrees, go be a Miami fan or something and lose to Rutgers. I don't really know what to tell you. But I guess that's it. That's my rant for the day. I just wanted to get on here and talk with you guys a little bit about it, get some stuff off my chest. If you made it to the end of the video, bonus points. You're awesome. And I want to know your thoughts down below in the comments. What do you think about the bowl game and just how the playoffs went in general? You think Florida State could have competed if they were fully healthy? You think players should have played? You think Mike should have done something different? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and let's talk Noles.